Hey, welcome to Beside the Point. My name is Malcolm again. And this is my lovely wife, Christy. How you doing today, honey?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Happy Labor Day to everyone out there.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful day out there. I hope you guys out there doing some barbecuing. And so we're here to entertain you. So no, we're not barbecuing. But happy Labor Day anyway. So today we're going to talk about parenting. Good parenting, poor parenting, based off of our experience. We're not here to give you any advice. We don't want to tell you how to parent your kids because everybody parents different. And whatever works for them, that's what works for them. So we're just here to tell you, you know, about parenting and overall parenting and what we've experienced.
Yeah.
So we've got we got two basketball teams, the football team, the baseball team, right?
Right.
Not that many kids. We have 10 kids total.
Right.
10 kids total. They're all grown. We got one more in the house that has a 18th birthday next week, and the day after her birthday, she'll be moving out.
No, she won't.
She'll be moving.
She will not.
Yeah. Well, she'll be paying rent.
He'll be moving in.
I'm not going anywhere.
Well, neither is she.
Anyway, so our youngest one is going to be 18 next week, and she's looking forward to it. We're looking forward to it. So she's going to be grown and considered an adult, but she's still going to be our baby. But she's still going to be moving out. So let's talk about parenting. What is parenting? There's really no definition and no role for parenting. What parenting is teaching your kids how to survive, supporting them, listening to them, encouraging them, and being a good support system for your kids. We don't want to discourage them, even though at times we may, because they do make bad decisions just like we did. But we're still there to support them. We don't want to question what they're doing. We just want to ask them and let them know which way to go and direct them. But they're going to be at that stage of their life, especially when they're older, that they're going to need that support. Now, when they're at home, parenting gets a little bit different. It's a little bit easier, do you think, when they're at home?
I don't know if I'd say easier, but you might have a little bit more say, but I don't know if it's easier.
Challenge? Well, I think it's more challenging when they're not home, right?
Yeah, I guess.
What do you think of what is your definition of parenting?
Well, I mean, I guess what do you mean by them not being at home? If they live with their other parent, or if they're an adult? Because
Well, I was thinking as an adult and they're not at home. 18 and above when they're considered adults and they move out and they're doing their different things, and we're still their parents.
right.
So how do we parent them when they're outside the home in that instance?
I don't think you need to parent them, but I think you need to be there for them. And I do think it's a lot more challenging because really at the end of the day, when they're parents, you don't have any, when they're adults or if they're parents of their own, you don't really have no say.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard for some people, especially to watch your kids struggle or fail. But I mean, all you can do is, in my opinion, is be there for them and give them advice if they ask you for it. But at the end, they're really gonna make their own decision.
Yeah, and I think that's where parents struggle is kids making their own decisions, and we're not able to influence those decisions once they get to a certain point. You know
Right.
what I mean?
But that is hard, but you have to let them figure it out on their own because you might think that your decision is the best way, but in reality, it might not be. And so they need to do it on their own and figure it out for themselves. Because I've had advice from people and I listened to what they said and I shouldn't have because somebody gives you advice doesn't mean it's the right advice.
Yeah, because parenting is not. There's no book for parenting, and there's nothing that says you have to punish your kids when they do something wrong. You know what I mean?
Right.
And no one says that you have to put them in a corner when they do something wrong. It's what works for that specific parent and that specific child. You know what I mean? And I think that's where a lot of people get confused is because a lot of, like I'm a Gen Z, and I find myself saying, well, back in the day, this is how we did it, and our kids came out great. We can say that because we can, but that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it wrong.
Did they come out? Did they come out without any trauma? Because I think that's different. Being great and coming out with trauma is different. Like I think some ways that the Gen Zs were raised was not necessarily the right way.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, was it the right way or just a different way? Because again, there's really no right or wrong way to parent.
Well, I mean, there is a right way and a wrong way to parent.
Yeah, when you talk about certain situations, maybe. So I guess you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
But do I think that there was necessarily the wrong way? I'm not gonna say that, but I don't think it was necessarily the right way.
Okay, I mean, I understand that. I know that as I was growing up, punishment played a big role in discipline. And a lot of times it worked and a lot of times it didn't, depending on the circumstance.
Right.
And sometimes the discipline that you do could be something that turns your kid away from you. But you're not going to know that until you do that discipline.
Well, I think that there should be discipline. I'm not saying that, but I feel like when we were kids, our parents weren't as understanding. I mean, do you remember your mom asking you how your day at school was, or asking you about your feelings about something, or being understanding?
No,
Right.
I don't remember that. It was once we got home, you need to do your homework, do your chores, and this is it before you do anything else.
Right. And we didn't. No one cared if we had a bad day. It was we were kids and we went to school and our life wasn't that hard.
Right.
But in reality, going to school and being in sport and all that stuff is hard. They're out doing just as much and they're trying to fit anxiety. They're trying to figure themselves out.
Right.
I don't remember that even having an opinion as a kid. I didn't even know.
You couldn't have an opinion. Oh no, you couldn't have an opinion when we were kids.
Right.
If you had an opinion when you were a kid in my generation, or when I was young, if you had an opinion, you were rude and you were disrespectful,
right?
And all that good stuff.
And is that real? That's not reality.
No, it's not.
They're little people, and they have opinions and they have feelings. Just as well, and I think that way of parenting, which I was guilty of that myself when my older kids were little, because that's how I thought was the right way to do it. But it gives you a lot of trauma, and it gives you a lot of. I was very quiet, and I didn't really, as an adult, stand up for myself because I was taught that that's disrespectful. You do what your elders tell you, and I mean, not I was a bad teenager, but as an adult, I really didn't talk back.
Right.
And then when I started standing up for myself, it was a big deal, I feel, because it was in our parents' generation, it is a sign of disrespect.
Right.
It wasn't that I was being disrespectful. It was I'm an adult and I have my own opinion.
Right.
So I don't necessarily think that that's the right way to do it, because I feel like just because they're your child, they're still adults and they still have the right to live their life and have their opinions and raise their children, not how you do it. Like my children do not have to raise their children the way I raised them.
Right.
And that's perfectly okay. I don't have the right to tell them that they're doing it the wrong way.
Yeah, but you do want to guide them in a good direction, whether that's what you did when you raised them or not. You still.
Well, yeah, and if they're abusing them or something, but so when my kids were little, I was taught to lay them on their side. Okay, that's how we were taught, right? Well, nowadays they're taught to lay their babies on their back. Okay, I don't have the right to tell them that's not the right way to do it because that's not how I did it.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, like stuff like that.
Okay. Gotcha.
Like I'm not saying like if you're out there whooping your baby and or putting your baby in harm's way, do I not have the right to say something? But I don't have the right to tell you that that's not the right way to do it,
Right.
is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Right. I agree. I mean, like you said, if you're putting your kid in harm's way, I mean, anybody would want to stop it and say, "Hey, what are you doing? You know, you
Right.
don't be doing that." But yeah, you're totally right. I think that say back in the day, things were a lot different, and with society playing a role in the way we raise our kids and the influences in the world today, you have to take a step back and look at yourself as a parent and say, okay, how am I going to do this? Because I know I can't do it how I did it back then,
Right.
or how I was raised. So how am I going to do it now? And but if you like we talked about before, offline, we talked about morals and all those good things. You want to teach your kids the good morals, but you also have society that also plays a role in technically raising your kids, because again, they're at school 8 hours a day, every day, Monday through Friday.
Right.
So you have the influences, and you have the teacher teaching them this thing, and the different punishments that they do in schools. Because back in school, in my day, it was okay to whip a kid in school.
Yeah.
You can't do that now.
No, you cannot.
Kids could walk out of the classroom today, but you couldn't do that then.
We didn't have open campus.
Yeah, you get suspended from school if you walk out of the classroom. It's things are a lot different today, so it does play a role in how you parent your kids, unfortunately.
Well, it does. And I also think, so back in our day, I think it was a little too harsh, but I think it's a little too lenient now, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
I think we should have found somewhere in the middle, because I feel like kids are too emotional now, and you can't say anything because you might hurt somebody's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, you could say whatever you want, and no one cared.
And I think now also is that, again, society plays that role, and a lot of the teenagers nowadays know that, oh, my parents can't do this to me because I'll just call CPS.
And I think that's wrong.
It is wrong.
Right.
It is wrong, because it's not allowing that parent to parent that child
right.
the way that child either should be parented or parented, so it's best for the family.
Yeah, because you have, I mean, no disrespect, but you have a bunch of baby kids running out here. Like back in the day when we were kids, if I was bad, the neighbor could spank me.
Oh yeah,
But
neighbor
now we
will
have
whip your butt.
so many people that go overboard and abuse people's, abuse their authority, or abuse kids. That's just not okay.
They've kind of taken our control as parents away,
right?
Because of all the different options they have out there for these teenagers, and the teenagers see this.
Right.
Our kids see this.
Right.
Right. So they're like, yeah, you can't whip me because I'll just call CPS.
Right.
But
the thing is people don't know you can whip your kid. You can't abuse your child. But they that twisted, and a lot of people get scared. Like I can't do anything because they're going to call the CPS on me. Well, you're allowed to discipline your child.
Right.
You're just not allowed to abuse your child. But a lot of people get that confused, and they think I can't whip them because their CPS will get involved. Well, that's not true. You can spank your kid.
I mean, even CPS will tell you that you can whip your kids.
Right.
You can discipline your kids.
You just cannot abuse your kids.
You just cannot abuse your kids. So if you want to spank your kid across the butt, or however you do it, you can do those things.
You can do that.
You're not going to take a belt and whip your kid across the face, or take a switch and whip them across their back like that. No, you can't do that, because that is actually abuse.
Right.
And that is definitely wrong as far as parenting is concerned.
And in CPS is not only talking about spanking. There's so many different kinds of abuse. They're talking about mental abuse, physical abuse. So you don't really see parents being like, I can't talk to my kid like that. CPS not get involved. Well, they would. I mean, if you're mentally abusing your child, CPS will definitely get involved.
Well, nowadays CPS is going to get involved no matter what. Anytime they're going to get involved no matter what. If someone calls and says, and CPS is Child Protective Services, by the way. I mean, it's different here, and it's called different things in different states. But CPS is going to get involved. They're going to investigate, and once you're in the system, And if they find nothing wrong, once you're in the system, you're in the system forever. So if someone else calls, they're going to come again, and then it's going to get more in depth and in depth each call after.
Well,
You know what I mean?
Yeah and no, because not to put my business out there, but I've had CPS call to me when I was younger, when I was going through a nasty divorce. And they just asked your kids questions, and they could tell that I was struggling because my kids weren't listening to me, and they literally told me, you can discipline your children, you just can't spank them. They weren't in my life forever. I was found unguilty of all the things that the person
Yeah,
was trying.
what I mean that you're in the system is that you're in the system. So if someone calls them again, your name's already there. That they
Well,
would like look it up and
yeah,
say,
but
okay,
sometimes they
well,
won't come out. So I got called
depending on the
multiple
situation.
times on me because of the custody, and people were being ugly and stuff. And lots of times they didn't come out because they are like, okay, I've already been out there, So they don't. I mean, they're not dumb. I mean, some of them.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Some of them will. If you get a dirty CPS worker, of course they're going to.
they're seasoned investigators, so they know exactly what to look for in actual.
Right. So if you get a
abuse
good one that's
cases.
really doing their job, they're not going to just take your kid away from you for no reason.
Right.
But there has been CPS workers that were dirty and took people's kids and put them in the system, and they didn't deserve to get taken away from them. So it's just with anything else.
Yeah. I mean, parenting is hard. Parenting is overall hard. It's a challenge whether your child from born until they move out of their house, move out of your home. It's very challenging. And so you have to know as a parent what works for you, what's going to be best for you, and you can't let anyone tell you should do it this way. Because, like you said, if you do it that way, what's going to happen is if hell breaks loose, then the finger going to be pointed at? Right. Even if someone told you to do it that way.
Well, right.
You know what I mean?
Everybody has their opinions, right? And everybody thinks that they parent the best way. But in reality, the only person that knows your child better than you is you.
Right.
So, like, we have a child that has super bad anxiety and all these things, and he sees a therapist, and everybody has an opinion of how to do it.
Right.
You have to do what's best for him, not for what's best for everybody else. And a lot of people are going to disagree with you, and be back in my day this and back in my day that. But you got to do what works for your child and what works for you. Now, if you're not doing anything, then yeah, but you need. I just believe that you got to do what works for you. Now, opinions. Now, somebody has an opinion, and like, I did this and this worked for me and my kid. Yeah, that's cool. But if nobody's gone through that, I don't think they have the right to give you the advice of it because they absolutely don't know.
Right. And you also have people that are not parents trying to give you advice on how to parent.
Right.
And those ones are the worst because it's like, you don't have to. Just because you see how it's done on TV,
right?
Or you see how someone else does it, that doesn't mean it's going to work for me.
Right.
Some people believe that putting your child in the corner for half an hour is okay. But is it okay? Does that punishment fit that crime? Just like anything else. Someone kills somebody, someone murders somebody on the street. Are you going to jail them for just 3 months?
Well,
the punishment has to fit the crime.
How old is the child? Because 30 minutes in the corner for a toddler is ridiculous no matter what they did.
I agree. If you have a toddler that you've told over and over not to touch the electrical cord because they can get electrocuted.
Right.
And they continue to touch it, a couple minutes in the corner, just so they know that you're not messing around with what you say.
Right.
And then once they come out of the corner, you explain to them, this is the reason why you cannot touch that thing. This will do this to you. This will do that to you. It's harmful to you. But back in the day, it wasn't like that. They put you in the corner or they punished you and they didn't explain to you after. And I think that's the thing today is that's one of the things of parenting is you have to explain to the child the reason why you're doing what you're doing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
When we were children, it was because I said so. There was no explanation of why. It was just because I told you that. And I was like that with my first kids. And then when my oldest son said, "I don't think I'm gonna be because I said so parent." I was like, and then I had my fourth kid. I can't be an I said so parent with him. He needs to know exactly why and the reasoning why this is being done. Um, so I think that works better because they understand. They they can reason with why that's happening. If you just spank them because you told them not to do something, they don't know that they weren't supposed to do that unless you install that in them.
Unless you explained it to them why they're not supposed to do
Right. A
that.
little kid doesn't know that scissors are bad for them and or can hurt them unless you've explained it to
Right.
them. So if they touch a pair of scissors and you told them not to and then you slap them for it, they don't understand that those
Right.
scissors are dangerous.
Right. It also goes into, you know, telling your kid that, like you said, if I tell my kid because I said so, then that can lead to some horrendous things happening down the road. And again,
Right.
we've talked about that before too, is that,
Right.
I said so doesn't necessarily work because in their mind, they're thinking, well, if anybody tells me I said so, then I'm supposed to listen.
Right.
So if your kid is, God forbid, lost in the store and someone grabs them and said, come with me because I said so,
Right.
their mentality is because, oh, yeah, mommy told me I said so, so I have to listen.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
you don't want to do the I said so stuff. You have to explain to them why
Right.
you're doing what you're doing. They're still not
Right.
going to understand.
Right. Right. Just like with my kids, like, or my grandkids, if especially now that my granddaughter's older, like, if I have to say she's just learning how to potty train and she doesn't really know how to wipe herself very good.
Mm-hmm.
When I am wiping her, I explain to her what I'm doing and why I'm doing it because I would not want somebody to touch her down there and her think it's okay.
Right.
So I let her know it's because she didn't get, it out good enough, or I need to help her because she still got
Right.
a dirty butt.
Right.
And I don't think back then that was something that they did. Like,
No, it was
didn't
like,
do that.
yeah.
And I wouldn't want her to think that it's okay for just anybody to touch her down there.
Right.
And I think that you need to explain to your kids, it's just like as an adult, you don't want somebody just touching you or hugging on you, or, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And they're kids, especially toddlers, they don't know how to express their emotions very well.
Right.
So when you do things, they're not able to explain to you that I don't like you to do that. They're able to get into depth on why they don't want you to do that.
Right.
They just act out, and then a lot of parents will get mad instead of explaining to them,
Right.
what they're doing. So, explaining to them and getting them to understand what you're doing is a good thing.
Right.
And as they get older, one of the biggest things is that we have to support them in what they do. We don't have to necessarily really agree with what they're doing.
Right.
We have to support them. So, from the ages of, like 15, 16 on up, they're starting to find themselves and they're doing all
Right.
these different things and exploring. And it's our job to say, okay, well, you have to leave that communication open so that allows them to come to you so you can, say to them, okay, well, what's going on? How's everything going on in the school?
Right.
Right. Everything's going good. They're telling you they want to go to a party. Well, what's going on at the party? And if you keep that open dialogue up throughout that whole entire time, your 15, 16, 17-year-old is going to be okay to tell you what's going on at the party and who's going to be there and where they're going. But back in my day, I was scared to tell my parents things like that.
Right.
Because I would hear, well, make sure you ain't doing this. Like, you better not do this. You better be home at this time. Mm-hmm. And that's what we want to do. But at the same time, that's not going to help them communicate to you.
No, and it's not.
You know what I
And
mean?
so I was a troubled teenager, and I did everything that my parents said I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But once they said I could do it, I didn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
So I parent a little bit different. I like with haircuts. I've let my kid have any kind of haircut they wanted to express themselves. I think your kids need to be able to express themselves. Did I like every haircut? No, I did not. Did I like the way my image of them was different than their images of themselves? Do I like the way they chose to dress all the time? No,
Nope.
absolutely not.
Nope.
I mean, as long as they're not showing their body and being
In a provocative way. Yeah.
I think you should let your kids express themselves. Is it hard? It's super hard because you're scared about being judged and you don't want people to think that you just don't care.
Right.
But they need to be who they are, not who you want them to be.
Right.
They need to find themselves. Like, your kid shouldn't have to dress the way you want. If you want your kid to be a preppy and he wants to be a skater, let him be a skater because he's just trying to figure it out. He's not probably gonna still be a skater when he's an adult.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's not. I want to say it's not up to us to tell them how to experience certain things, unless it's something that's going to put them in danger.
Right.
So if he wants to experience dressing as a skater and being allow them to do that because they're going to end up finding their way if it doesn't work for them.
Right. I mean, I think our older son has went through 500 different
many different phases. He went
He went through preppy. He went through skater. He went through grunge.
Yeah, he went through all of that. Yeah, he went through all of that.
He doesn't dress anything the same as he did in any of those stages.
Right. He's totally different than what we thought he would be.
Totally different. And not in a bad way.
Not in a bad way, no.
None of them are.
No.
To be honest, they've all turned out pretty good, but I think we've literally let them be who they are.
Yeah, allow them to find themselves.
And we've had a lot of judgment along the way, but I don't see. I mean, they were normal kids, did normal things that kids do and get in trouble, but I don't think any of them have done anything outrageous. I mean, I did outrageous things when I was a teenager,
right?
And with us having that many kids, you would think that somewhere along the way, one of them would turn out
the way we probably didn't want them to be.
Right. Or in a bad way.
Or in a bad way.
And none of them have. And I think one of the things is we let them be them.
Let them be themselves.
Right.
Yeah. Let them experience themselves and let them find what's going to work for them.
Right.
At the same time, we still support them so they're not doing something that's going to harm them.
Right.
And that's where that's at that point in their life, that's when you need to be supportive because they're trying to find themselves. They're experiencing different things.
Right.
So we need to guide them. And if they say, hey, I think I'm going to be a preppy person. That's what I want to try to be. We'll support them in that.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with it. You support, I mean, I don't want to be preppy, but we're not going to tell them that because that will discourage them or lead them in a different path where they don't want to go or be in a path where they're just going to be a problem child.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like our oldest, I used to think that he would sit at home and think to himself, what can I do to make my mom's heart go into her stomach?
Mm-hmm.
And he would find all these crazy jobs. Like he was a firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
Then he was on a boat out in the ocean.
Fisherman on a boat.
And I never said anything to him. I would just pray about it because I knew if I said anything, it was just going to cause a problem.
Well, the only time he did say something is when he wanted to join the military.
And that was a bad idea.
That was a bad idea.
And he was very angry at me. And he is grateful now that I said something, but he wasn't grateful then. And then after he decided he wasn't, actually, they didn't accept him into the military because he had a tattoo. And like this much of it showed out of the uniform. So he couldn't go. And I think that's God. But then the next thing was a boat out in the ocean.
Yeah.
And it was like with a month in after that. And I was like, okay, I can't tell him I don't want him to be out in the ocean on a boat because he's going to think I'm discouraging him from everything he wants to do.
Right.
So I just prayed about it. And unfortunately, the boat broke down in the middle of the ocean and they had to be rescued. He didn't call me and tell me. He called his stepdad and told him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell him I prayed about it because I knew he would be Like,
He'd have been like, "Yeah, it's your fault. It's your fault. The reason why it happened. That's why it
Right.
happened."
so he didn't do that. And then he became a deep sea diver. He went to school to do that.
Underwater welding.
Yeah. And I used to tell him, I cannot wait until you get a wife so you can scare her instead of me. And now that he has a kid and a girlfriend, he doesn't do all those crazy jobs anymore.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, he's kind of set on what he wants to do,
Yeah.
even though he's working through it. But he doesn't have all these different outlandish things that he wanted to do. He was on the entrepreneurship on making T-shirts, the
Yeah,
fisherman, the fireman.
He used to travel all the time.
He wanted to be just travel.
He's been to
Peru, China,
and all these places.
Yeah.
But I guess my point to that is if I would have said every time he did something like that, no, I don't want you to do that. No, that's not a good idea. He would have just been discouraged.
Right.
And he wouldn't have felt like he could come to us and tell us because we would be shutting down all his dreams.
Right.
Did I want him to do any of that stuff? No, not really. Because nobody wants their kids to have dangerous jobs or go to Peru or China without it. He just went with friends and stuff.
And I think that's the thing is that, us as parents, I think a lot of parenting that I've seen is that parents weren't able to do certain things in life, so they try to live those things through their kids.
Right.
And try to guide their kids in the direction that they wanted to have gone when they were younger.
Right.
And that's what causes the conflict and
Right.
all the other issues. And I see that a lot in parenting. And as far as parenting, I think that's wrong.
Right, because
I don't think you should live your life through your kids.
Nor do I think you should make your kids live the life that you want.
That you want them to.
Or no,
Right.
that you want. So like if you want to say, if you want to, I don't know, like, so I don't know how to explain it, but like, so if me, so I don't want my kids to just settle where I'm at or do the things that I do and not live their life. Because when I'm not here no more, they didn't get experience their life because they lived here they did all they lived their life for me, and I want them to live their life for them. But a lot of parents can't let their kids go.
Right.
They can't cut the string.
Right.
And I think
that's why I said our 18-year-old needs to move out next week when she turns 18.
And I think that's more harm than good because then your kids feel like they're letting you down.
Yeah.
And they don't really do what they want to do because they're scared of what you're going to say or what you're going to think. And I think that is more toxic than anything because they need to live their life. I mean, my son sent me pictures of him hitchhiking in where was he?
It was in Peru, I think.
No, it wasn't Peru. It was Australia. And I'm having a heart attack. Like, why are you?
Yeah. His bicycle broke down or something.
Yeah, I don't remember what, but
yeah, I remember that. That was funny.
It was like, oh my gosh. But he's alive and he can tell his kids those stories and he experienced that. Like, I don't know. I just think you should. And did I call him and yell at him? I definitely called and yelled at him.
Well, of course, that's that's just the parent part of it. Is that you're like, oh my god, he scared you there for a minute,
right?
So now you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna call you and tell you what.
Right, and he's like, I was just playing around, Mom. Like I didn't really catch a ride, and I'm like, okay, still. Yeah. But yeah, I just think in a healthy way, let your kids be your